Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life After the Military, a show completely focused on strengthening the mental fitness of veterans and their families, helping them transition from military to civilian life, and helping them overcome adversity. Our show is powered by Pivotal Moments. Go check them out at pivotalmoments.org to learn more. My name is Lee Elias, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host, Howie Cohen, and we are privileged to have Master Gunnery Sergeant retired Vonzell Mattocks with us today. Master Gunnery Sergeant Mattocks served in the United States Marine Corps for over 23 years. And after retiring in 2005, Vonzell owned and managed an express employment professional franchise, managed the execution of a Department of Labor hospitality industry grant for the Prince George's Community College, and held a number of positions in support of active duty military, veterans, and their families for the Northern Virginia Community College system. Vonzell currently works as the executive director of the Veterans Employment Initiative, which is an integral part of the Northern Virginia Technology Council Foundation. Vonzell is a man dedicated to learning, as he has earned a Bachelor of Liberal Studies in Accounting from the University of Mary Washington, a Master's of Business Administration with the focus on management and entrepreneurship from Hawaii Pacific University, and a Master's of Education with focus on higher education and administration from George Mason University. Vonzell, that's an awesome resume, and we want to welcome you to Life After the Military.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it.
No, we
Thank
appreciate
you, Howie, for the invite.
Yeah, no, the pleasure is all ours, Vonzell. And again, look, we always have the first question on these episodes. As we said, you served in the U.S. Marine Corps for over 23 years, and you retired as a Master Gunnery Sergeant. Tell us about your service. Tell us how it shaped you. Tell us how it made you the person you are today.
Sure. Thanks, Lee. I was pretty blessed coming in the service. I had a broken childhood and was a foster child. So to get out and someone saying they're going to give you a job, feed you, and give you some schooling and training, I lifted my hand and took my oath and joined the Marine Corps out of high school. And when I got in the Corps, I was infantry, and that experience took me not to the Himalayas or anywhere where we had foreign adversity. It took me to Hawaii. And in Hawaii, it changed my life. They put me up in a penthouse. I was one of the more mature individuals with a car. It gave me, they had this thing called Rent Plus, and they paid my penthouse bills and my utilities, and I was in E3.
Jeez.
Definitely a tough experience, but when I would go to Kaneohe for infantry training to be a warrior, I had a house, and the military and that didn't get along because you're standing on line in your skivvies in an open squad bay. It's very different at 10 p.m. for taps. So I had a very interesting start that took me to Marine Security Guard type duty in Hawaii called Marine Barracks. And then I went to Camp Pendleton and switched careers into more of a combat camera role. I switched again and went to the drill field down in San Diego, where I was able to kind of see what made me and reflect as a drill instructor towards others. Had a successful tour. I picked up some meritorious promotions. So by this time, I'm already a E6 Staff Sergeant, which is a rank many of us retire in the Marine Corps. It kind of beats you up pretty tough. You hike those hills, you do this. But I got transferred to Quantico, where they make officers. And I had seen the movie with Lou Gossett and Richard Gere, The Officer and the Gentleman. I knew what I was supposed to do there, and I did not one tour, but 2 tours. That means I've been a drill instructor for a third of my career. At Officer Candidate School, I learned that I could keep up with the individuals I was training, and I started going to night school at Nova, and eventually was let off of active duty to go to Mary Washington to finish my bachelor's degree. I know the Marine Corps thought I was going to take a commission, but I was already at E7, and I said, well, I'd rather keep going up this side of the ladder rather than start all over on the other side. And so I took a position in Japan to be a comptroller and a tax director. That means the tax director for all of Okinawa, thousands of Marines, And whatever state they came from, I helped them with their state, because I had a very thorough CPA training type program at Mary Washington in Fredericksburg. After doing that job, so the Marine Corps is just bouncing me all over the place. And after doing that job of being the tax guy, I came back and did another tour at an officer candidate school as a senior gunny up for first sergeant or master sergeant. It splits. And I got selected for master sergeant and got sent to Hawaii. And imagine that. And I went back to Hawaii, this time as an E8 master sergeant, and consolidated 4 MOSs so that the Marine Corps combat camera could be a force in the Pacific. And I sent Marines to the plane landing in China. I sent Marines to Philippines. I sent Marines. So I was just the deployment manager for combat camera. And I came back to retire at Quantico, and I was the E9 of the whole OC field. And so I did dot mil training, making sure that the Marine Corps, and I had my MBA, as you mentioned. And so what ends up happening is I can't get promoted anymore. And I've been helping Marines transition all the way through. So what I did was I transitioned out as the senior E9, which allows everybody below you to get promoted faster. And I owned a staffing company, which you mentioned, Express Professionals. And by owning that, I learned all the private industry and the workforce development outside of the military, whether I had people staffed at law firms, medical clinics. Some people put things together. They were in distribution, manufacturing. I had folks all over. I had this big company of staffing folks. And you mentioned the Gaylord was being built. And I had the luxury of staffing, whether it be their spa, they're hiring 50 chefs. I mean, I just went crazy. But in that time, 2008, there was a dip in the economy, a small recession. And I closed those doors and was hired by the community college. And by doing that community college work over in Maryland, living in Woodbridge the whole time, I might add, I was commuting back and forth for 6 years, whether it be to run the company or to help the college build culinary arts and hospitality. So I did that and came back to the homeland of Northern Virginia, worked at the community college here, and was eventually recruited to work at NBTC. Sorry. I hope that wasn't too lengthy.
No. That's listen. One of the things I really enjoy about preparing for these podcasts is to do a little research on the guests that we have, and you have as Lee mentioned, a stellar resume. And I in my research, some of the things you talked about, and I think we'll actually talk a little bit more about this here in a second, is you have such a varied level of experience, but all of it is focused around helping people, helping others, and that's a consistent trend I see in everything that you've done. And when you described your military career, that was equally as consistent as what you've done since you retired. But so what I'd like to focus on next, though, is the actual transition. As you said, you retired in 2005. What I'd like you to share with our audience is how you prepared for and executed your transition from the Marine Corps. What I really would love for you to share with our audience is tell us what went well in that transition and the planning and execution, what did not go well. Because I think sometimes we can learn just as much from things that didn't go well as things that did go well, especially in today's environment, because as we were talking about off camera before the episode started, it's a very different environment out there now than what you and I have seen, because we were pretty much on the same timeline in terms of service. It's a very different environment out there now than what you and I experienced back in the early 2000s. So what went well, what did not go well? And if you had it to do over again, given the experience you have now, what would you advise the folks that are getting ready and planning for their transition? What would you advise them to do that maybe you did not do as well, or you didn't do at all? How could you help them better prepare for that transition?
Sure, Howie. Thanks for allowing me to share this. I would focus on the big three E's. You have some transitioning service members want to go into education. I don't mean as a job, but they want to pursue a higher level. If they have a degree, they want to get a higher one. If they don't have a degree, they want to get one. And then there's entrepreneurship. And then the third E is employment. For me, in my transition, I was a little more exposed, if you will, by having attended a lot of schooling. So what I did right, I went into entrepreneurship out the gate. Some would say it was too early, too late, but I had a wonderful experience with capitalism and learning how to run a business and learning how and getting up as if I was still in service and putting my shirt and tie on and driving to my new job. You work for yourself when you're an entrepreneur. And I would recommend anyone interested in that to read the book, The E-Myth. It's a book that kind of paraphrases the lady builds pies, and she's one of the best at pies. People come from all over to get her pies. But the lady in the E-Myth, the challenge is she can't reproduce herself. She can't duplicate herself. So she never masters the other four parts of the business to make the business run without her being in it. She is the business. And that's a very good read. So everybody tells you, hey, be the best, love life, do what you're talented at, but be careful with that. There's no one rule to get you all the way through business. So in my entrepreneur explosion of business, I couldn't even do my accounts payable and accounts receivable and sell and staff individual companies at the same time. So it was a little stressful, and I wouldn't change a thing in that model. Before I took that leap, though, I would say that my wife thought I was going to take a cushy job in the federal government. That's what she thought. And I probably shocked her too. My wife has been an entrepreneur and still is to this day. So that was the first one. What did I do wrong? I probably could have pursued a federal opportunity transitioning out of the military. I have some friends that have, and they're retired a second time, if that's what you want to do. I don't plan to sit in a rocking chair on a porch anytime soon. I have a lot more vigor, a lot more things I want to see. As I mentioned, I just went to John Maxwell certification. I'm about halfway of where I think I'm going, and I'm in my 50s, and I still want to play, and I play hard, I work hard, and I treat everybody with honor and respect. It kind of goes both ways. So I hope that answers the question about my transition. It went well because I was overly prepared at helping others transition, so that when I took my transition and went into staffing, I could help all of them. I helped some military guys get jobs they couldn't get, but because of the staffing relationship with companies, I got veterans into jobs that they couldn't figure out on their own. And then the company gets to try you out and you get to try the company out. It's a win-win-win. So it was a great experience.
No, and that's very interesting, Vonzell. So what because I don't know, I think some of our audience would pursue the entrepreneurial spirit that they may have. So maybe you can just kind of expand on that a little bit more. Like, what were you thinking at that time? Because some people, I think you're right. Some people will take a very traditional approach and maybe a more conservative approach to say, I don't want to take too much risk. I'll be very happy working as a federal government employee or a state government employee, whatever. Others may think that, and I know I was like this, that I served for, a little over 27 years, and I want to do something different. I'd like to get out into corporate America, whatever that might be. I mean, that's a very broad phrase right there. I knew I did not want to work for the government. I wanted to work for corporate America, but I was probably a little bit too risk averse in that I did not have the confidence to go out and maybe start a business on my own. So I'd love for you to kind of share what your thought process was at the time and what gave you the confidence to take. That's a pretty big leap to take coming out of the military. So share more of what your thought process was, and I think maybe folks in our audience could really benefit from that.
Okay. So I felt comfortable because I had income coming in as a recent retiree. I was extremely healthy, that I can endure for 3 years, getting up at 5:30 like I was still going in the Marine Corps, and coming home at 7, 8 at night. If I was going to work that hard, I felt I'd like to try entrepreneurship. If I'm at this, I'm just at a pinnacle point where I'm mentally ready, I'm physically ready, and I'm financially ready. That is what I went through. I read a lot. I read a lot of articles that try to help individuals forecast, predict their viability for entrepreneurship. And it has done really well in 2021. People are trying that never would before. People are retiring from other jobs and going into it in their 50s for their first entrepreneur adventure. So it is a good model, but it's really important. If there's anything I could have done better, it would have been partnering, not with my customer partnering, but more of an alliance among my colleagues that are doing the same work as I. For example, I had a territory and it was in Maryland. Woodbridge wasn't available. So I'm driving 45 minutes or miles away, and I didn't really bond with my other colleagues to left, right. I tried, I did, but I know now that that's a very key ingredient. We talked about support, and there's levels of support. And I think having someone else fighting the same fight you're fighting, getting up every day doing similar work is a brotherhood in itself. And I couldn't maximize that for whatever reason. I think I tried North and East, and we did do some deals together, but I didn't feel like I did in service, where people either have the same attitude, persona, driven attitude. I didn't get that kind of bond. So I'm pretty sure it impacted me from little things that I could have done better if I had a coach or a mentor or a brother that's doing the same work that I'm doing. So that's what I say I could have improved on.
Yeah, and so maybe just to help the audience a little bit, and because I know Lee mentioned this in the in Vonzell's introduction, immediately out of his retirement, he was a franchisee, and he was the owner of an express employment professional franchise. So when Vonzell's talking about reaching out to his colleagues, I assume what you're talking about is your territory that was offered to you was up in the Maryland area, where there were other franchises in the Woodbridge and other areas in the Northern Virginia area. So there's where the opportunity to maybe reach out and develop that kind of relationship with these colleagues who also were franchise owners, and kind of learn what was going well for them, what wasn't going well, what could you teach each other to make everybody successful. So if that's I guess to our audience, if going into being a franchise owner is something that is appealing to you, that's a great lesson learned from Vonzell. You don't have to go this alone. Obviously, there's the overall headquarters, so I'm sure that'll give you some training and some support. but there's also the horizontal support of your colleagues who have franchises in and around your area that you can leverage what they're doing well, what you can learn from what went well, what did not go well. So that's a great piece of advice for anybody that wants to pursue something like that. I appreciate that, Vonzell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vonzell, you brought up something very special to me and important to me. You said the word, the bond, which is something that I'm all about, right? Something that I love to do is work with teams to create that team bond or family environment, however people want to define the word or whatever they want to call it. And, something I want to bring up, and it seems like we bring this up a lot, is that, military people, military veterans, they understand the idea of community or fighting for the same mission. And I'll tell you a quick story that happened to me over the last couple of weeks. I have always revered the military. I've always looked to them for leadership advice, whether I'm working in sports with my own business teams. And we have created, as you might expect, really tight-knit groups within my companies. We communicate very efficiently. We're all there for each other. It's a family-like environment. So much to the point that sometimes I forget that maybe the civilian world isn't like that all the time, right? I had an experience recently where I was working with two very high profile people that are good people, but have a bit of an ego, and not in a negative way. They know who they are. Let me put it that way. And I realized a few weeks in that communication was horrible. The egos were colliding, and I was kind of in the middle of it. And I was getting very upset because I'm thinking to myself, like, this doesn't make sense. This isn't how I do things. And then I realized that, Lee, you've forgotten that the way your groups operate, the way the military operates is not the norm. So you spoke about that. So I like to remind people every episode this: if you were in the military, any branch, you were on the greatest team on the planet, you have to mentally prepare for your transition that you are no longer going to be on the greatest team on the planet. All right. And that the civilian world, two things, does not fully embrace the idea of mission first yet. That's something I'm trying to change. It's something Howie's trying to change, something you're trying to change. And two, and this is more important, if you are a military veteran, you are a complete asset to any organization when it comes to creating that team bond, the team cohesiveness, and understanding and helping them find that overall mission, right? And I think that from where I sit as both an employer and a former military spouse, that is the most underutilized and the most misunderstood aspect of any veteran being involved with any civilian operation. All right. So it's not even a surprise to me when vets go to work for the federal government or stay in that realm, because that familiarity, that brotherhood, sisterhood, as you mentioned, is such a superpower. And the statement I'm going to make is that the world, we'll start with our country, but the world could benefit from a little bit more leadership, a little bit more mission first mentality, a little bit more cohesiveness, and a little bit more bonding when it comes to people working together. Because at the end of the day, and I'm going to say this again, the military champions this more than any other organization on earth, any of them. It's the people you do the work with more than the work itself. All right. Yeah. So you mentioned that. I wanted to reiterate that. I do have follow-up questions, unless you want to say something. Sorry, I just talked a lot there for a minute.
Yeah, I can speak to my transition from service to, I went in a direction that will allow me to set the tone as the leader of owning my own company. But I have had several jobs where post my Marine Corps career, where individuality has taken a precedence over team.
Right.
And it's not said often enough, just as you mentioned, but it does cause challenges in communication. It does cause challenges in cohesion. It does cause challenges in what we're trying to get done, because someone's trying to, do it on their own or get credit for it, when most people that have served in uniform, you get up, you kind of know who you are. You're wearing a rank of some sort. When you're out here, there's a little more freelancing going on, and people can't seem to figure out, well, whose initiative is it and who's going to get credit? And it's a more me world versus leaving the nest of one mission, one team,
Right.
one fight. It's very challenging. And service members that can figure that out don't necessarily have to do, I've been fortunate, I don't have to do what everybody else is doing. They can squabble about some of them, who's getting credit, and I really don't.
Right.
I'm on the team. I want to bring more team cohesion to the team. How can we get this done and make it a legacy? And that's where I'm at.
I'll tell you this too, and Howie, I haven't even told you this quick story yet. I had the real privilege yesterday. This totally is in line with what you just said, to interview Mike Smith, who's the greatest jockey of all time in thoroughbred racing. He's won the Triple Crown. He has more wins than anybody else. And towards the end of the episode, I asked him, what's the one question that you wish people would ask you that they never do? And I want to reiterate, this is the greatest of all time in his sport, right? And he said, just kind of without even, he said, I wish people would ask me more about the other people that work alongside me to make it possible for me to win. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about, being the greatest of all time. He goes, I'm not here without all these other people. So that's usually echoed by people in his position, Tom Brady, Wayne Gretzky. It doesn't matter who you ask. Well, there's a lot of people who helped me get here. As a society, and again, military people, military veterans, you champion this. We need to do a little bit more of that. I think there was a time period in this country where we led a little bit more like that. We've gotten away from that. And Vonzell, we're going to talk about, a little bit later, social media and the human highlight reel that has become television and how that's affecting everybody. But, military people and veterans, I say this, just like you've always led, you lead the way with this, and you got to know that when you're going into the civilian world. So Vonzell, I want to keep going along with your story here. Also, we'll talk for about 7.5 hours, which I wouldn't mind, but we do have a recording limit after some point. So in April of 2008, you were responsible for managing a strategic training and education partnership in hospitality, that industry, with an industry grant awarded by the Department of Labor. And as the director of this hospitality grant, and I love this, you manage personal equipment and $2.4 million of budget for the Prince George's County College. So I want to know, and I want our audience to know what you did in this role and what the grant was intended to provide. And I want to just reiterate before the question, it's funny, I have an employee ask me about all the money my company has come in. He's like, did you ever look at all that money and just think that's mine? I go, no, it's not mine. So how do you take a budget like that? 'Cause that's a large budget. And again, tell us what it was intended to provide and how you succeeded in that role.
Well, once again, I was recruited for that opportunity. I worked for myself and had my wife had gotten sick, and I was taking her to Hopkins for some things, and the market had crashed. I think I mentioned.
Right.
So
it's 2008, right?
I was definitely
2008 time period.
Yeah, 2008.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yep. So I was recruited, and I said, "Hey, I'm not really into hospitality. That's not my background." They go, "Oh, don't worry about it. If just do this one interview for us, and if you get the job, you get the job." And I went, "Okay." So I went over to the community college, did the interview, got the job, and they had already been awarded these funds. And it was actually more than the 2.4 because I had another $1 million from Gaylord.
Right.
So the job is, there's nobody that does cooking. There's nobody that does hotels in Prince George's County, if you could believe that. And everything is in DC or Northern Virginia. And they're building this new city called National Harbor. So I had a really good boss. He was the vice president of workforce development. And he just let me at it because I had an entrepreneur spirit. So I was able to recruit I think they had 3 students. I ended up having 1,000 students. I ended up having hiring 2,000 people to work at the Gaylord alone. I was billing the Gaylord before I took this job. So they were a partner of mine. I had Marriott, I had Hilton. And I put them all at a table. Same thing I do to this day with my task force. And it's not about me. There are great minds in the room. if we work together, using my background as a military leader, we can figure out how to make this not just successful, but legacy. And so that's what I did. Numbers wise, I only had one clerk to help me do everything I did.
Wow.
One young lady. And she understood what I was doing and supported me. And I came to work every day thinking about how can I make this 3.5 million work to get all those students through. And it was very successful for, and keep in mind, that's federal dollars, which is taxpayers' money. But I have a different attitude than most. I never thought it was mine. I didn't use anything arbitrarily. I was frugal. Marine is the branch of the services that doesn't have as much money as the others. I'll just put it like that. That's the nicest way to say it.
Yeah.
I could squeeze extra, more than 5 nickels out of a quarter. Believe me, they've trained me well. So I hope that answers the question, but it's the stories that really do the telling. And one of the stories is I was walking through the building over at the Gaylord National and my new role, and I must have had 50 chefs. Now, there's no chefs in this territory, this area of the U.S. So how do you get 50 chefs? You dial for dollars. Yeah, I got on the phone. I had people from Florida. I had people from out of state. I had people from out of country. And you bring them all, and you showcase them. You say, hey, here's the chef. And now we got chef television shows all over the world. Sous chef for this and another chef for that. And who's the hottest chef for this? So it was during a very transitional time, and I was pretty honored for that role. Thank you.
So Vonzell, so I want to continue on with your story. After that, in about May of 2013, you had a interesting association with the Northern Virginia Community College, and spent looks like a little over 6.5 years there. You had several positions with that organization, included a workforce grant and military education analyst. You were the interim director for the Workforce Regional Center. And then you were the liaison for the Virginia Community College System Initiative called Veteran Education Resource Initiative for Transition, Advising, and Success. So that's along with an acronym, Veritas, I think is associated with that position. Podcast is how to help them with their transition. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing in your role at Northern Virginia Community College. So tell us what you did, and I'd love for you to share some stories about maybe some successes, people who really thrive because of some of the work that you were doing with them over that 6.5 year period.
Sure. Thank you, Howie. So yeah, I transferred there as a workforce analyst, and I started to write grants. I had executed a grant extremely well in Maryland. And when I got there, we talk about miscommunications. There was no liaison for grant folks. So I was the only one among all these peers in workforce development. And when I went to the grant lady for the entire college, Northern Virginia Community College is the largest in Virginia. It's got like 70,000 students, and the grant lady didn't want to talk to me. She goes, "You work for that guy, you over there in workforce." And I had to build a rapport and explain to her that I'm not going to do anything without her permission. I'm never going to write something and send it out representing the college, even though I'm the workforce arm of the college, without her permission. And it took her a while to believe that was true. And after a while, she realized I was sincere. And we started to work together on a couple grant initiatives. And I eventually started writing grants that would get awarded. I started, believe it or not, with $5,000. And then I got another one for like $70,000. Then I got another one And by the time I left that department, I was up to 2.4.
Wow.
So just figuring out how the systems work. And I'm always, the entrepreneur spirit in me helped me do things individually, not being micromanaged, free reading on my own to learn how to do it. And was very successful in that. And then something changed as far as they wanted me to do a different job. And I wanted to move to Woodbridge to work. So it was a kind of quid pro opportunity. And I came down here and did the Veritas, the Veterans Employment. And that's why I always start with the 3 E's, saying how important education is, how important entrepreneurship is, and how important employment is. Because employment is kind of like the soul of a man or woman. You're trying to figure out how can you need income to live. It's a very key ingredient. And so if you can get in a job that you get fulfillment from, oh man, you're. So I'll tell you, one of the work studies, a student, very, very handsome fellow. His name was Dallas, of all names. That was his real name. And he was an Army veteran, and he was attending college. And if you attend college full time, you get a housing stipend. That housing stipend is about $2,000 to live, though. So you have to still figure out how to get your diapers, get your car gassed up, pay your utility. And if you're married, mama is thinking, that's my $2,000 to help me take care of the house. And you go ahead and go to school. Well, the new GI Bill pays the college your tuition, so you don't have any financial drama there, and pays you the housing allowance. So it's a well put together program, and I think the GI Bill, the new GI Bill, is wonderful. And this particular young man was trying to figure out how to make more money but be a full-time student, because he got accustomed to getting that money. And I would talk to him about how you can bridge part-time. You can't, if you're going to be a full-time student, you need to be a part-time employee. So only look at jobs that are part-time. Okay. So you can make this model work for yourself. Don't look, because some students actually stop going to college after being enlisted. Remember myself, 18, coming out of high school, they get 22, 23. They don't know how to function without that salary coming in of whatever job they do, or those hours. And so you have to make a decision. Am I going to be poor now, or am I going to be poor later? And some folks figure it out and get a solid education that can take you anywhere you want to go, and not put limits on yourself. Or you could start grinding $8 an hour, $9 an hour, $10 an hour, and see where that's going to get you. And so the military individuals, if they maximize those benefits, they got something there. So Dallas ended up, I saw him in Potomac Mills shopping mall about a month ago. And I got an update. He's finished his degree. He's working in some security fashion. He's pulling in 70, 80K. I mean, what a success story from a guy that was just trying to go to school and make enough money to take care of his family. And he had children, I could recall. So that's my success story, just the one based on that experience as the Veritas. And then the third one, I was as the director of the Workforce Center. Our welding is way out in Manassas. And I wanted to figure out, I think I told you I'm a big fan of blue collar trade jobs, because I don't think academics is for everybody, but everybody's got skills. And we have to figure out how much are skills, how much is academic. So it's all education. And Woodbridge has the HVAC, and Springfield, Virginia has the medical campus. And so each campus has something unique. Veterinarians is out in Loudon, a part of Noah's Arm. So you have to know where all the that's a key ingredient, is to know where the resources are for our service members. So when anyone came up to me, they could sit down and get free counseling on mentorship, and I'll help them build a roadmap to get there. And that was the beauty of that job, as you said, Howie, helping others find their way. And I absolutely love it. And if I do end up leaving NVTC, it will be for a job where I'm helping veterans go where they want to go next. I mean, why would I bottle up everything I know that can bless other people?
Well, and that's where your passion is, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like that's where we always talk about, finding your why, finding your passion, what truly motivates you. And it is clear to me from the research I've done and listening to you today, that is what your real passion is. So good, good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So Vonzell, I'm going to add in another question here. There's someone who has experienced higher education multiple times. You've helped people find that direction. So I know just from my experience dealing with some of my military friends, education whilst in the military or out of the military is a little bit of a different roadmap for everybody. So we can't ask, hey, what's the right process to finding a major or school? But what I can ask you, and I think would be beneficial to our audience, is what are some of the questions, active or transitioning military should be asking when it comes to pursuing higher education? Because I know a lot of guys that say, I got to do that. I got to do that, but they might not know what that means or entails. And again, you just talked about that story of, you have to have some income coming in too. So could you go over maybe the three, 4, 5 questions that active or retiring military members should probably be asking themselves when it comes to higher education?
Sure. Not just higher education, but transition in general.
Totally. Yeah.
They have an opportunity, whether they did 5 years, 10, 15, or 20. It's a new world for them. And they have to ask themselves, where do they see themselves today? Because if you're not in the present, you can dream all you want to, but you got to be in the present to know, because that's how we build up how we're going to measure our growth.
Right.
So if you ask yourself, where do you see yourself in 3 years? Can't say 5 because the world evolves a little too fast for everybody. So I would say 3. And I think it's real important that they choose a career that they're going to enjoy. Howie mentioned earlier, I was a little frustrated when I first became a grant writer that I started to learn, pulling facts and data, that more than 50%, this is before it became public knowledge, more than 50% of service members do not wish to do what they did in service. That's huge, because we spend billions with a B building programs that will let you if you were a person that was a mechanic, they'll try to make you stay a mechanic after life in service.
Right.
If you were a medic, they'll try to keep you as a medic. If you were a logistics, and some of them, myself included, at 5 years, I was thinking one way. At 10 years, I thought totally different. At 15 years, I thought totally different. So you have to take small bites of new direction. And the biggest hurdle for all of us is technology. Technology continues to evolve and update. And the folks 30 and younger, they're growing up knowing that. They don't even think about it. They just know that. Now, they're not necessarily smarter. I tease my children. What it is they don't have to go to the library like we did. They believe this computer can tell them everything. And that's not necessarily true, because now you're getting, what did Trump create, this fake news thing? He's kind of right that everything you hear and read is, you got to verify that. You got to vet it yourself.
Right.
We all have to vet it. So if you're intelligent enough to think about where you want to go and how you're going to get there and build that roadmap out, that's the question you got to ask yourself. And you can't go by any one reading you've got to have vast research and enjoy learning enough to mold yourself into that new person you wish to be.
Right. And I think in addition to that, understand the experience. I remember when I was young in the workforce, I was blessed to have a very great technological education. I grew up in a time period where I had experienced the internet enough that it was part of my repertoire of skills. Right. When I got in the workforce, I remember I was working with people that had been in that role for maybe, 20, 30 years in some cases. And I remember thinking, man, why don't they work faster? Why don't they just do this? Why can't? And what I wasn't doing was respecting their experience. And I many times the hard way had to learn of like, look, Lee, you know the technological side of this, but you don't have 30 years of experience in this field to rely on. And a lot of times I realized like I got to put my own ego aside, and really trust that these guys know what they're doing. And at the end of the day, it came down to like, look, we can work together, right? Echoing what we said earlier, right? Like I need to respect their experience. They probably should also be respecting my technological acumen at that time. And when we did that, really great work started to happen, right? And as for those of you listening, again, Vonzell's putting his fingers together as the connection point. And it's so true, right? We had a great guest that said, when the heart and mind hit together, that's when like real creativity can take place. And I think it's the same in business. So thanks for sharing that, Vonzell. I think it's important. So moving on to the next question real quick. So in continuing on, this is your life. In February of 2020, we talked about this a little bit already. You took your current position as executive director of the Northern Virginia Technological Council Veteran Employment Initiative. That was a mouthful, but I said it. And this is the important part. Yeah, is a program under the 501c3 Northern Virginia Technological Council Foundation that connects transitioning military members. And Howie and I talk about this actually off the air all the time, 501c3 programs. And for the listeners, this is one of those things, I'm sure you're told about it. One of the greatest benefits of being in the military is some of the programs you have from a business standpoint afterwards. So, veterans and military spouses look to this place for new career opportunities. So tell us a little bit more about the NVTC Foundation, which is a much easier way of saying that. And the Veteran Employment Initiative.
Well, I was the third person to be a veteran helping that NVTC. NVTC has about 500 companies, all technology, that has a CEO. Her name is Bobby Kilberg, who retired this summer. Bobby Kilberg had a desire, her and Steve Cooker from Monster, to have all these companies support veterans. And the way to do that was, if we've got the jobs, is what they thought, all we really need is the veterans to know we have it. So we built a website, ustechvets.org. And that website is the portal. And then you have me that host events that allow veterans to meet me as the representative, someone they're comfortable with, that will coach and mentor them. And then they get introduced to the technology jobs. Now, most of them are technology jobs, but we are talking, 50,000 jobs, and they don't have to stay in this area. Some of these companies in NVTC are Fortune 500s. But I'm older now. But someone coming out of service, keeping their head down and doing their job, doesn't understand what I'm saying. It's almost another language. But there are wonderful opportunities, as I mentioned earlier, in technology, where those are the jobs of the future. So we don't work on our cars as much. So there's not as many mechanical jobs. There's still some. We don't do a lot of our smart technology fixes things in our homes. We just reset it because they're computer generated to how they operate. So when you look at that, if you're in technology, whether it be an apprenticeship, which is very big for transitioning service members, they got the program called Skill Bridge, which allows service members to try to gain new skills before they transition out. This is a wonderful program. And if you put NVTC and someone like me that understands education, entrepreneurship, and employment, the individual really has a fighting chance to do whatever they want to do.
Right.
And if they don't have a skill, I'll probably show them a door where they can knock on it and get the certification classes they need.
That's so valuable.
So they say, you need this certification. They go, I got one yesterday. I had to communicate through my phone and explain to him, Onward to Opportunity is a door through Syracuse University that offers free training to veterans. Another one is Intellectual Point in Northern Virginia is the only representative in all of Northern Virginia that receives funding from the Department of Veteran Affairs. $45 million is out there.
Wow.
And if a veteran is in service, got out, is going to college, doesn't have to use any of their college benefits, but they need to be a veteran entitled to those benefits. And they'll look at their paperwork and let them take courses that give them the certification to go with that degree that they're pursuing and not use their funding. I mean, that's a game changer right there.
Yeah, and it's out there too. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
it's out there. Sometimes I think people
but they can't connect to it.
Right.
And so there's still a human element in me that still does research, still loves helping you, and they can sense that they're going to get that kind of help. And they come at me getting comfortable asking questions that they may not be comfortable asking an employer.
Right.
For example, next Wednesday, we do Vetworking. It's a platform where my avatar gets close to yours and will be just like the Zoom screen when we get up close. And I can ask you as an employer, or you can ask me as a job seeker for assistance during this time when we're doing virtual. How about we maximize this virtual experience and make the workforce better and make the companies better? I hope that answered.
Oh, it totally did. And, speaking of, it's funny, you talked about technology changing a little earlier and how, you want to look about 3 years out, not 5 years out, just to prove that point. If you asked any one of us 3 years ago where we'd be today, I guarantee you nobody would have predicted a pandemic and that Zoom becoming the way to communicate and, how we're all used to this now. And, funny story, Vonzell, my undergraduate degree is in broadcasting. All right. That's before I got into entrepreneurship and sports. When I went to school, there was such a high importance on the quality of production and backgrounds and how videos are supposed to look. And we were trained that way. And it's funny because the pandemic threw all that in the garbage. And, this is a professional show and podcast now. And this is what it looks like, where 10 years ago, this would be completely inappropriate and looked down upon. But it just shows you technology can actually go both ways, where it can normalize something that wasn't normalized years ago. So Howie, before we move on, I think this is the time of the show to do the book title.
Hey, Lee, if you don't mind, I'd actually like to kind of dig a little bit deeper into some of the things Vonzell brought out.
Please,
First of all, this concept of the Veterans Employment Initiative is really, really interesting to me. So I'd like, number one, do you have to be in the Northern Virginia area to be a part of this program that you run? Is that kind of a requirement?
No, there's two sides to that answer, though. There's an employer side that I support all NVTC companies. Now, they have a headquarters around here, but they're global.
Right.
Some of them have 100,000 employees. Okay, so they're global when I say global. And then there's a veteran side. So yes, I've helped veterans while they're still in Germany. I've helped veterans that are serving. Some of them have gotten out and are out on a contract and serving in foreign areas of the country and the world. Texas, it doesn't matter where the veteran is. So the veteran seeks assistance. What they should be thinking is, I want to tap into that network.
Right.
And we all know something like 80-something% of all good jobs, and I mean good jobs, are through networking.
Exactly.
So if someone is offering you my network, jump in with both feet, and you'll be better served as we thank you for your service, you'll be better served and exposed to things and information at a speed that allows you to make good decisions.
Yeah, so I think that's really important because and I'm one of them. Just based on the name of the organization, Northern Virginia Technology Council Foundation, you might say, well, I have to be in the Northern Virginia, or let's just say, the Metro DC area, and it's not necessarily true. You can be anywhere in the world and plug in and gain benefit from being a part of this Veterans Employment Initiative, which I think is really important for our folks in our audience to understand. And I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about the Vetworking events that you do. How often do you run those, and can you kind of explain a little bit more? How can someone get invited into that opportunity, and how often do you do it, and what are the kinds of things you do in those I guess it's basically I don't imagine you don't do them as much in person now, but it's done more virtually through Zoom. But if you can talk a little bit more about it, because again, I think that's a great resource that I would love to see more people. And again, whether you're in the military now and getting ready to transition, but it sounds like you could be out in the workforce and still, as a veteran, plug into it. And maybe it's a career change after you've already transitioned out of the military. So I'd love for you to kind of explain that resource a little bit in a little bit more depth to our audience.
Yes, definitely. So the employers are about 15 companies, and I put a logo on the table. And as your avatar comes up into the room, you can decide, you could sit down with Booz Allen, talk to the recruit. I mean, this is priceless information, especially during this pandemic, where you can actually have an intimate conversation. If you're the only one sitting at a table for 4, then you got sole propriety on having a one-on-one conversation. Hey, I looked at your website. I saw this opportunity. I was checking on this, and you're talking directly to the talent acquisition manager or the recruiter. It's a beautiful operation for a job-seeking veteran. If the veteran has been out 10 years, as you mentioned, some of them want to move up too. Some of them want to experience a new opportunity also. They are on the call, and they can be anywhere because we're virtual. Secondly, so I talked about the employer, I talked about this. Now, how do you get the information? I'm on LinkedIn, and I've posted yesterday, I'm pretty sure. I'll probably post next Monday. The link is there. The only requirement I have of a job-seeking veteran is that you fill out a questionnaire. It's a page. Are you looking for a job? Do you have a clearance? What do you need that can help you? I've sent 2 in the last 24 hours to a resume expert because they filled out the questionnaire. So the questionnaire is not that evasive. It just allows the service member to say, hey, I want in. But if they went to LinkedIn and saw Vonzell Mattocks with T's, saw my profile, they can get it there from my postings. They can go to nvtcveterans.org, our website. You'd have to search around for the Vetworking piece because it's not on the home page. It's covering a lot of other things that we've done. So you might navigate there. And then it takes you to a portal that you fill out the questionnaire, and then it sends you a link that gives you access to AirMeet. We're using a different platform called AirMeet for this, with the avatar thing. And I don't have my web person anymore, so it has an old date. But everyone that fills out the questionnaire, I get a drop in my box, and I send them the new link. And that's what we're doing for next Wednesdays, Vetworking. And it is phenomenal to be in the same room with Khaki, Amazon. And I intentionally invite small veteran-owned companies. They'll be in the room, but they're not household names. Secure Tech 360 is a woman, minority-owned, out of Richmond. And I read about the whatever the governor newsletter is for the week. apparently this young lady had 80 new openings in Northern Virginia from Richmond. So I'm going to help her fill them with veterans, right?
Great.
I mean, so it's just little things like that when you come from the 3 E's of helping people. Most people are looking for one of those 3 things, either employment, entrepreneurship, or education.
So one more question before I turn it back over to Lee Vonzell is
Sure.
what, based on your experience having done this work now for a bit, any advice that you'd give to a veteran how to prepare themselves for those kinds of events? You know, what kinds of questions would they want? Maybe thinking it through, here's the kinds of questions you may want to ask. Here are the kinds of things that you want to present to a potential talent management representative, helping them to kind of put their best foot forward and be successful. Anything come to mind that,
Sure.
Based on what you've seen, like these are the kinds of things you may want to prepare yourself as you get ready for these kinds of sessions?
Definitely. I would say number one is you don't have to share your resume. This is a high touch, high skilled opportunity where you get to meet one-on-one with people that can change your trajectory of where you're trying to go in life. So what I've tried to do is make veterans more comfortable in this space, not feeling that they're not ready, they need to do this. You don't need to do anything but show up. If you show up, you're going to learn something. And if you learn something, it's going to change your direction of what you're thinking. That's how this high touch is set up. When you have the opportunity to meet people that are usually barricaded behind walls that you never get a chance to, nobody knows where those resumes go. We also have the ustechvets.org. That website is connected to these employers already. So in my short time there, I'm a go-getter. And my job is to help veterans transition into great opportunities. So I've set this up for them, to have great success. What I probably should work on in the next chapter is testimonials, getting that feedback so people really see the plethora of those that have made this transition, as hard as it is, because I'm not saying it's easy by no stretch, but I think we got to get better at letting people help us. We got to get better at leaning in and leaning forward and saying, hey, I'm not quite sure when you said that, what did that mean? Having those small, quiet conversations, that is what is life-changing for a veteran seeking a job, pursuing a graduate degree, which path should I take, or entrepreneurship. And I think they don't need anything. They can go to nvtcveterans.org and look for the link. And once they fill out the questionnaire, they'll get a link, but the link will be outdated. And I've posted it everywhere. And it's just, we just don't have the personnel right now during the pandemic to update it. But once they get to the event, I would say see as many of the people at the table as possible to get your get acclimated to your transition. It's better than a job fair. Job fair, you can pass out a resume, but this one, you can ask questions that have nothing to do with that. You can say, hey, have you all ever, I've been in business working at Lockheed for 7 years, and I want to do my own thing, and I'm looking to be a subcontractor. I'm in this niche space. Has your company thought about that? Or do you have some kind of mentor or protege program? Totally out of the box thinking, because you're there, instead of, here's my resume. Resumes are important, but they're not the end all. Relationships are the end all.
Great. Well, I appreciate your sharing that. I think this is an awesome opportunity, and we'll make sure that we include all the links you're referring to in when we post this episode. We'll make sure those are available and accessible to our audience. I think that's terrific. Hey, Lee, I apologize, but I just want to pull the thread on a few more things, but let me throw it back over to you.
What are you apologizing for? That's what the whole show is about. You're supposed to pull threads on things. That's why we're doing it. My thing's a joke. So, Vonzell, so every episode, I listen to what the guest says, and I formulate, if you were to write a book, what the title of your book would be. All right. And again, these are all rights reserved. You can take this and run with it. Some of them are funnier than others, but in listening to our entire conversation, if you were going to write a book, right, the title of your book would be, it's a little bit of a longer one, Hawaii Higher Education and Helping People, the First Half of My Life, a Marine's Memoir by Vonzell Mattocks. That's your book title. There you go. You got to go to Hawaii twice, but yeah, no. Howie, did you want me to ask the last question, or did you?
Why don't you go ahead and finish it off? Yeah, absolutely.
I was gonna say, because we're tossing back. That's how you know it's a good conversation, Vonzell. If Howie and I are off the axis of who's asking the next question. But look, our parent company, Pivotal Moments, seeks to strengthen mental fitness worldwide. We all struggle with our own mental fitness at times in varying degrees. And if you're willing to share this information, have you had any struggles with your own mental fitness, or have you seen others that have struggled with it? And if so, share more about what you experienced or what the other people experienced, and what you did to manage those challenges, and how you strengthen your own mental fitness on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. The first part of that question, have I had challenges? The answer would be yes. My challenges are unique to me, though. If I had to say, I actually am more transparent. I'm married 29 years coming up. I said, honey, I noticed that don't have the same vigor that I had when I was younger. I've had, rotator shoulder this or this, that, and that lowered my personality. But because of the gray hair on my head, I was able to reflect and go, as we deal with whatever we have going on mentally and physically, we can actually push people away because we're agitated more, because we got a pain somewhere. We have a mental challenge from our time of service, and you're pushing people away. I made sure I didn't do that, but I will share with you in confidence that I have a son that is 35, 2 tours, one Iraq and one Afghanistan. He's 100% disabled, and I'm not his official caretaker, but I'm his dad. So I check on him daily. I did the suicide challenge last year, 22 push-ups. Every 22 seconds, a service member takes his or her life. That's big stuff in my book. And if we can do anything to make those individuals that are uncomfortable comfortable, we win. So we have to have open arms, open doors, and open policies to these individuals so that they know that they are not alone and they have resources available to them to walk through what they're going through. There is no one way to fix everyone's issues. However, if you're not talking about it, you're not fixing anything. So that's where I'm at in my heart and soul about mental challenges, about what we got to do to make them whole. And there's one more thing I want to say. Hey, Keita, I'm on a call. Babe. There's one more thing I want to say. In my group of the VEI task force, I looked it up yesterday. It is 50% supporting entities and 50% employers. Because I know, because I'm a gray-haired guy, that they must be whole to represent their best self on the job. We make the mistake of not looking at the whole service member and making sure that they have the resources. If they want to be whole, we got to provide the resources. And if they don't want to be whole, we got to talk about it. And if we could get to that point, we can make the service members transition so much better than it already is. I shouldn't have to convince you to hire a vet. I don't want to hear any of the cliches that make it the right thing to do, this, that, and the other. Hell, in my opinion, if you're really trying to build your organization, they're probably the best talented individual that comes with teamwork attitude on day one. So You figure it out. If there's hiring shortages, if you don't have a culture that makes them feel warm and connected, now you can't replace what they did in service. But there are some companies getting it right. Amazon, it depends on what department or division you're in for that culture. Amazon's too large of a company for me to say a general blanket statement of what works and doesn't work. And we're all in a different place. Some individuals are getting $25 an hour and some individuals are getting $250K. And somewhere in between, there's a culture. So everybody has to work on it. Whatever organization is working on that the best, they're going to have an inviting get together and give the veterans Veterans Day, cook some pancakes for them if they're coming in at all. You know, if they don't come in, catch them on that Friday when everybody comes back. I mean, it's not that complicated, but having senior enlisted individuals like myself in your organization adds so much value at understanding the demographics of culture, all the different diversity issues that we're dealing with today. We need to wise up on that one. That one's an easy one for me. But I think all of us have to do our part. There's no one person, no one policy. The golden rule is always good. Don't get me wrong. Treat others like you want to be treated will work, 110 out of 100. So I hope that answers that question.
Oh, it totally does. Yeah, look, like Vonzell, I've been saying this for a while, is that we've kind of lost sight on trusting in teamwork, right? Mm-hmm. Those two key words. And I subscribe to what you said. Look, as an employer, I want military people on my team because I know what they can bring to the table. And I also know that there's a responsibility on me as an employer, as you just said, to make them comfortable as well, right? It's not just enough of, oh, this guy's really good at logistics and teamwork, right? Like I have to create the environment for that to thrive. And I think that that's part of it too. And we just as a society just aren't quite there yet, where we look at the person more than the position. And maybe where we don't think about, how empathy plays into it. Look, part of the stigma behind mental health is things of like, oh, empathy is weakness. It's just like, man, where do you got to be mentally to say something like that? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there's times you got to toughen up and stand up and walk. Mm-hmm. All right. Like, I get that, but it's not weakness to ask for help while getting up. And what kind of a person are you if you're not willing to give that help? So I just think you tap on that 100%. And look, I'm just going to say to the audience, because we're trying to target employers too. Military veterans will only enhance your environment if it's a great team environment, right? And that's on you as the employer to create that. So if there's a stigma behind hiring military people to your organization, you might want to take a look at your organization and really deep dive into why that stigma even exists. But no, anyway, it was a phenomenal answer. I want you to know that. And Howie, I'm going to throw it over to you because I know you have some thoughts on this too.
Yeah, Vonzell, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I like what Lee said as far as, the leadership has a responsibility to develop a culture. Right. I get that, but it's when I get the luxury of counseling both sides, right, the employer side, and explaining that to them. I've had some veterans that weren't whole trying to get a job, and coaching them is very challenging for me as well. So it's kind of like you're trying to meet in the middle and not put the onus on either one side. We all got to do better. Better is better. There it is.
Awesome.
There you go. We all should be striving for better.
Yeah, the rising tide lifts all ships. Totally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Vonzell, I want to thank you. As I continue to evolve in my position as a director of the Charlie Mike channel, as part of Pivotal Moments and participating with Lee in these Life After the Military episodes, I've come to believe that there's three types of guests I want to invite onto this episode to share their experiences. One is the men or women who were in uniform and transitioned, and how can we learn from their experiences. The second are the veteran service organizations that are out there that veterans can turn to active duty or veterans can turn to, or family members for that matter,
Mhm.
that provide different whether it's recruiting, job placement, helping to write resumes, helping to prepare for interviews. There's a whole gamut of some provide legal support. There's a whole gamut of service type organizations that are out there, and want to expose our audience to the ones that I think are doing it really well. And of course, the third is our organizations, corporations, companies, whatever, that are hiring, that are looking to bring veterans into their workforce. Obviously, you fill very, very beautifully two of those requirements. You were in uniform and went through the transition. You're providing incredible services to veterans, to help them through their transition, to help place them. And I just appreciate what you're doing, what you've done all of your career, military and post-military. And I just want to thank you for being on the episode and sharing a lot of what you do and the services that you and the Veteran Employment Initiative can do to help veterans as they go through that process.
Namaste.
Well, Vonzell, again, to echo how you've been a wonderful guest, and again, lots of drops of gold in this episode for our listening and viewing audience. And this is why we do it. I would say this again, I am privileged to do this show. I said it to you before the show with both you and Howie. And if you're listening to this and it resonates with you, make sure that you continue to listen, tell anybody you know that needs to hear it. We want you to know you've been listening to Life After the Military, which is powered by Pivotal Moments, and you can learn more about the organization at pivotalmoments.org. We want you to head over there, and the main reason why is we have lots of educational content. So we're hoping that the podcasts do a great job of giving you some information, but if you head over to pivotalmoments.org, there's just a ton of educational content for you and your loved ones dealing with mental fitness, mental strength, both in the military vertical and beyond. So for Howie Cohen and Vonzell Mattocks, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes of Life After the Military, wherever podcasts can be heard. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.